I never thought I'd find myself writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. It all started with our anniversary trip, something we'd been planning for months. My wife, Jessica, and we've been together for about 8 years. Things weren't perfect, but I thought we had some kind of understanding. She's always been a bit bitchy, a little manipulative, but I guess I just shrugged it off. She's gorgeous, confident, sometimes too confident, and she's got this way of making you feel like you're lucky to even be in her orbit. We decided to do a safari in Africa, a big deal for us. We wanted to get away, reconnect, celebrate. Jessica's always been obsessed with wildlife photography, so I figured she'd love every minute. She's the kind of woman who's quick to dismiss any suggestion of trouble. She's also a master at hiding her crap, always has been. But I started noticing small things at the beginning. Little bits of makeup on her shirts when we'd get back from our excursions, which was odd because she's generally pretty careful. She'd get strangely distant sometimes, staring at her phone during dinners, acting distracted. I brushed it off, figuring she was just overwhelmed or caught up in her photography stuff. But then there were the texts. A lot of them always late at night, always deleted. She'd say she was talking to her sister or a friend. She'd toss out lines like, "You're just paranoid," or "Stop being so insecure." Honestly, I didn't want to believe she was cheating. I mean, I trusted her, or at least I thought I did. But something about her changing demeanor, the way she'd avoid my gaze or get snippy when I asked about her phone, started gnawing at me. I wasn't the jealous type, but I'm also not an idiot. Then, a couple of days before the trip's end, I saw her sneaking out of our bungalow late at night. I tried to ask her about it, but she just snapped, told me she was stretching her legs or getting some air. That was the first real red flag I remember. She's never been one to go out walking alone at night back home, let alone here in the middle of nowhere. Still, I didn't want to believe she was doing anything truly wrong. Maybe she was just stressed, or maybe I was reading too much into it. But the seed of suspicion was planted, and it grew sharper every hour. Then I started hearing rumors from other tourists. Someone told me they saw Jessica and a tall guy, dark hair, camera slung around his neck, disappear together during one of our excursions. I brushed it off, told myself it was coincidence. But then another guy sent me photos, clear shots of her and this guy, deep in conversation, far away from any wildlife, far from the group. They looked intimate, close. Too close for just a friendship. That's when I knew. That's when everything changed. I wasn't just worried, I was furious. How could she? After all our plans, all the years, her promising she was faithful, and here she was sneaking around with some wildlife photographer she met during our trip. My stomach twisted every time I looked at those photos. I couldn't believe I'd been blind for so long, or maybe I just didn't want to see what was right in front of me. The worst part, she lied about everything, about her whereabouts, about her intentions. She told me she was just friends, that he was a client, that I was overthinking. But the truth was there in those photos, and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, going over everything. I'd been used, played, lied to. I didn't even know who she was anymore. How could she betray me like that, especially when I trusted her so much? I thought about confronting her then, but I wasn't ready. I needed a plan, something cold, something precise. I couldn't just explode and show my anger. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how deep her lies ran, and I had a feeling this was just the beginning of something much worse. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The photos haunted me. They were proof, undeniable evidence that Jessica had been lying, sneaking off, and probably more than just talking with that guy. I couldn't sit still, so I decided I needed to gather more information before I did anything drastic. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. I knew I'd have to confront her eventually, but I wanted to be sure I had all the facts straight to avoid getting blindsided again. I waited until she was in the shower, then quietly grabbed her phone from the bedside table. That was a gamble. If she caught me, I knew I'd be in for a fight, but I also knew I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I unlocked her phone, heart pounding, and started scrolling through her messages. It wasn't easy. She was meticulous about deleting anything incriminating. but I had enough to see some suspicious exchanges. There were texts from the night before, explicit in nature, talking about escaping together, the thrill, and how badly they wanted to be alone. Nothing outright saying we had sex, but the implication was clear enough. Plus, I found some photos she'd sent him, artistic shots of her in her safari gear, but also some that looked suspiciously intimate. I was angry, but I kept my cool. I didn't want her to catch me spying just yet. Instead, I took screenshots and made mental notes. I also noticed her messages had escalated. They talked about meeting up after the trip. That was a slap in the face. She'd lied too. My face multiple times about where she was, what she was doing. I felt like I was losing control, like everything I believed in was crumbling. After she finished her shower, I decided I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I told her I needed to talk, seriously talk, and that it was urgent. She looked annoyed, like I was interrupting her important day, but I didn't care. We sat down in the small lounge area of our bungalow, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I pulled out her phone and showed her the screenshots. Her face twisted with surprise, then quickly shifted to anger. "What the hell is this, Jessica? Who is this guy? Tell me the truth," I demanded, voice low but firm. She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "You don't have any right to judge me," she spat. "It's just a stupid flirtation, nothing serious. You're overreacting as usual." Her words were dripping with contempt, and I could see she was trying to dismiss the whole thing. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. She told me she was just being friendly, that the guy was a photographer who wanted some shots for his portfolio. She said she'd never meant for it to get this far, that she was only trying to find inspiration, and that I was just paranoid. Her voice was shrill, her eyes glaring. She called me possessive, jealous, and even accused me of ruining her trip because I kept asking questions. It was classic Jessica, blame shifting, gaslighting, twisting everything around to make me the bad guy. I felt every fiber of my body heating up with rage. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I held myself back. I knew I had to be strategic. I told her I knew she was lying, that she'd been sneaking off, that I had the photos, the messages. For a moment she looked genuinely caught off guard, then the mask of arrogance returned. She told me I was paranoid, that I was crazy, and that I needed to get over myself. That was the last straw. I realized then she wasn't going to admit anything, not without a fight. At that point, I was overwhelmed with a mixture of feelings: confusion, betrayal, heartbreak, anger. I couldn't believe she'd done this after all. We'd been through, after she promised she'd never cheat. But the truth was laid bare now. I'd been stupid to trust her so blindly, and I knew I had some serious decisions to make. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not when I knew she'd been hiding this side of herself all along. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was bleeding inside. I didn't cry, not then, but I felt a cold numbness settling over me, like I was losing my grip on reality. That confrontation was just the beginning. I knew I had to plan my next move carefully. I was not going to let her walk all over me or dismiss what she did. I decided I'd gather more evidence, think about how much I was willing to forgive, and whether I even wanted to. I was hurt, yes, but I also knew I'd be damned if I let her think she could get away with it. This was her betrayal, her dishonesty, and I was going to make sure she paid for it somehow. After that explosive day, I knew I couldn't just leave things as they were. Jessica's lies, her dismissive attitude, everything pointed to her feeling she could get away with anything. But I wasn't about to be played like a fool. I started thinking about how to turn the tables, how to make her realize I wasn't going to sit back and let her cheat and manipulate her way out of it. I needed to set a trap, one that would reveal just how deep her lies went, and honestly, how much I was willing to fight for myself. Over the next 2 days, I kept my cool. I didn't confront her again immediately. Instead, I gathered more evidence, going through her messages, her photos, and even secretly installing a spy app on her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to see what she was up to. During that time, she kept up her act, acting as if everything was normal, snapping at me when I tried to bring up her strange behaviors, acting bitchy and dismissive like she didn't care. It made me hate her even more, knowing she was so good at faking it, at hiding her true self. Then I got a call from one of the other tourists. He told me he followed her during Side excursion, saw her sneaking off with that photographer again, and even caught a few moments of them making out behind a bush. I felt my stomach turn. It was confirmation, clear as day, that she was lying, sneaking around, cheating on me. My mind raced with what I could do next. I knew I had to get some leverage, something to make her squirm, to force her to admit everything. That evening, I decided to confront her directly, but this time, I had a plan. I waited until she was eating dinner, then casually dropped some accidental hints about all the rumors I'd been hearing. I wanted her to feel cornered, to see her squirm. I told her I knew she'd been lying, that I had proof she'd been sneaking off with that guy, and I was tired of her bullshit. Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back with her usual bitchy attitude. "You're impossible, Mike," she spat. "You're so paranoid. I don't know what you want from me. Just leave me alone." But I persisted. I told her I'd seen the photos, heard the rumors, and I wasn't going to cover for her anymore. Her eyes darted around nervously and her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but then she just shrugged and looked away. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I told her I'd be leaving her on the spot if she didn't come clean and tell me the truth. I said I wasn't going to sit around and watch her lie and cheat her way through this trip. I wanted answers, real answers, and I was prepared to walk away. That's when she started crying, fake tears, but tears nonetheless. She played the victim, said I was ruining everything, that I was overreacting, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. Classic Jessica, blamed someone else for her mistakes, but I wasn't buying it anymore. From that point, I knew I couldn't trust her. The woman sitting in front of me, denying everything, was a stranger. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a strange mixture of heartbreak and resolve. I realized I had two choices: keep chasing this illusion of a marriage that was already broken, or cut my losses and walk away. Honestly, part of me wanted to believe her lies, to pretend I was wrong, but the evidence was too much. The photos, the rumors, her lies, they all painted a picture I couldn't ignore. I decided I'd tell her that I was done, that I'd had enough of her games, her manipulations, her lies. I needed her to see that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't going to be played anymore. I told her I was leaving, right then and there, and I would take no more of her bullshit. She looked stunned, like she didn't expect me to stand up to her so strongly, but I didn't care. I was sick of her bullshit, and I knew I deserved better. I packed my things, feeling a strange mix of relief and despair. I was walking away from someone I once loved, someone I thought cared about me, but I knew now that she only cared about herself. And so I left that safari feeling like my world had shifted beneath me. The betrayal was beyond anything I'd expected, but I was finally starting to see the truth. Jessica was a liar, a cheat, and someone who didn't care about me. It hurt, but I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I knew I'd have to rebuild. From this, learn to trust again, or maybe just learn to trust myself. Whatever came next, I wasn't going to let her take me down with her. I'd become stronger, even if it meant starting over. The days after I left her in that room, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My head was spinning, and I kept replaying everything in my mind: her lies, the photos, the way she pretended to be innocent. Honestly, part of me wanted to go back, to shake her and demand she tell the truth, but I knew that wouldn't do any good. She was already so good at lying, and I was done being her puppet. I decided I'd cut all contact, at least for a while, until I figured out what I really wanted. I stayed at a quiet hotel for a couple of days, trying to process what had happened. It was surreal. One minute I was celebrating our anniversary, and the next I was packing my bags, realizing I didn't even recognize the woman I'd married. I kept thinking about all the signs I'd missed, all the moments I'd brushed aside because I wanted things to work. I felt stupid for trusting her so blindly, for thinking she was better than that. But then again, how could I have known? She was so good at hiding her true self, so bitchy and manipulative when she wanted to be, that I was practically blind to it. During those days, I kept thinking about revenge. Not in a destructive way, but in a way that would make her understand I wasn't some pushover. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without consequences. I started planning quietly. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal the way I had deep down, where it really mattered. I didn't want to hurt her physically, but I wanted her to see that her lies had consequences. I wanted her to realize that the man she'd been cheating on, the man she dismissed as insecure, was strong enough to walk away and make her regret her choices. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I kept it all inside, letting the anger simmer beneath the surface. I'd always been a patient guy, but this betrayal pushed me to my limits. I contacted a private investigator I knew from work, someone discreet, someone who could dig into her activities without raising suspicion. I paid him to find out exactly what Jessica was up to when she was sneaking off. I needed concrete proof, something that would leave no room for her to deny. The investigator came back within a couple of days, handing me a stack of photos and reports. Jessica, it turned out, wasn't just sneaking away during our safari. She'd been meeting that photographer in secret, even after the trip ended. They'd been seen staying in a nearby lodge, exchanging messages, even making plans to meet again after I left. The photos showed her with him, in hotel rooms, in private moments far from the prying eyes of the group. It was clear that this wasn't just a fling, she was in deep, and she'd been lying to me about everything. That's when I felt a mixture of rage and relief. Rage, because she'd betrayed me so thoroughly. Relief, because I finally had the proof I needed to make her see the truth. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was okay with this, not anymore. I sat in my hotel room, staring at the evidence and realizing that I had to do something irreversible. I couldn't let her continue this double life, not without consequences. I reached out to an attorney I knew, asking about my options. I wanted to file for divorce and make sure she knew I was serious. I also wanted to protect myself financially and emotionally. I wasn't about to be some cuckold, humiliated and played for a fool. I needed to stand up for myself, to reclaim whatever dignity I had left. Deep down, I knew I would never be the same after this. She'd broken something inside me, but I also realized I was stronger than I thought. I'd survive and maybe even thrive once I got away from her. The decision was made. I would confront her again, but this time with everything laid out. I planned to tell her I knew about the affair, that I had proof, and that I was leaving her for good. I wanted her to understand that she couldn't lie her way out of what she'd done. I was done playing the fool. The next step was to go back and face her, to lay everything on the table and see how she'd spin her web of lies then. I didn't care anymore about her fake tears or her manipulations. I just wanted the truth out in the open so I could finally start healing. The moment I decided to go back and confront her, I felt a strange mix of calm and fury. I knew I had the evidence, I knew she was lying, and I was prepared to lay it all out. I didn't want to do this over the phone or in some passive-aggressive way. I wanted her to see me face to face, to see that I wasn't broken, I wasn't weak. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, and I was finally ready to hold her accountable. When I arrived back at the hotel, I could feel the tension thickening in the air. She was in the lobby, sipping her coffee, pretending like nothing had happened. Her bitchy smirk immediately irritated me, but I kept my composure. I told her I had something to say, something she wasn't going to like, but she better listen. I pulled out the photos and reports from the investigator and placed them right on the table between us. Her face twisted in anger and shock, but she tried to play it cool. "You're bluffing," she sneered. "You're just trying to ruin everything because you're insecure." But I held firm, my voice steady. "No, Jessica, I'm not bluffing. I know everything. The lies, the sneaking off, the photos. You've been cheating on me with that photographer. I've got the proof." She stared at the evidence, her eyes wide, then quickly looked away. "You don't know what you're talking about," she spat, but her voice trembled. "You're just jealous because I don't want some boring life with you. Maybe I needed excitement, something you couldn't give me." She tried to deny it, to spin her web of bullshit, but I was done listening. I told her I was leaving her, that I couldn't trust her anymore, that her lies had destroyed everything. I said I was going to file for divorce and make sure she paid for what she'd done. Her bitchy attitude melted into desperate tears, but I wasn't moved. I knew this was just her desperate attempt to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty or ashamed. But I wasn't going to fall for it. Jessica started screaming, calling me names, accusing me of being possessive and obsessed. She said I was crazy, that I was overreacting, and that I was just trying to ruin her life. Her tears were fake, I knew that now. She was just good at pretending, at making herself the victim. I stared at her and realized I didn't love her anymore, not the way I thought I did. All I felt was disgust and anger. That day, I made the decision to walk away for good. I told her I wanted nothing to do with her anymore, that I didn't care about her apologies or her fake tears. I packed my things, left the hotel, and didn't look back. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but also the clearest. I finally saw her for what she truly was, someone selfish, manipulative, and willing to betray everything we built together just for a thrill. Walking out that door, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with heartbreak. I knew I'd lost someone I once loved, but I also knew I'd gained clarity. I was done being her fool. I wasn't going to let her ruin me anymore. I decided that from that moment I would focus on rebuilding my life, on healing, on trusting myself again, and on moving forward. I didn't want to carry her betrayal with me forever, but I knew I'd never forget what she did. That's the hardest part. Now I'm trying to put the pieces back together. I've got a lot of pain, a lot of questions, but also a newfound strength I never knew I had. If there's one thing I learned from this mess, it's that the truth always comes out in the end. No matter how much someone lies, their actions reveal everything. And if you're caught in a betrayal like this, the best thing you can do is face it head on, be honest with yourself, and never let anyone make you feel small again. I still hurt, but I know I'll survive. And someday maybe I'll even find happiness again. Looking back now, I realize just how much this whole experience changed me. Jessica's betrayal tore through my life like a hurricane, leaving wreckage I wasn't sure I could ever rebuild from. But eventually, I started to piece myself back together. I learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to fully repair. But that doesn't mean I have to carry her betrayal forever. I've come to see that the pain, while raw, was also a wake-up call. It forced me to confront who I am, what I want, and what I deserve. The months that followed were the hardest I've ever endured. I felt the sting of loneliness and the deep sadness for what we lost. I also felt anger, resentment, and a sense of betrayal so intense that some days I wondered how I could ever trust again. But in time, I found ways to heal. I blocked her on social media, cut off all contact, and focused on myself. I threw myself into work, into my hobbies, and into reconnecting with friends I'd neglected. Slowly, the pain lessened, and I started to remember who I was before all this happened. One thing I learned is that women like Jessica, who manipulate, lie, and cheat, are often hiding something darker underneath their bitchy exterior. That realization helped me let go of some guilt I carried, thinking I somehow failed as a husband. No, I was human. I trusted her and she betrayed that trust. It wasn't my fault. I can't change her, only myself. And I chose to move forward. I don't hate her anymore, just feel a mixture of pity and relief that I'm finally free of her toxicity. This whole ordeal has made me more cautious but also more aware of what I want in a relationship. I refuse to settle for someone who manipulates or lies just to get what they want. I want honesty, loyalty, and someone who truly values me. That's not too much to ask. I've started dating again, cautiously. I don't rush into anything, but I'm open to genuine connection now. I want trust, not chaos. To anyone out there who might be going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs. If someone lies repeatedly or sneaks around, don't tell yourself it's just a phase or that they'll change. The truth always comes out in the end. And when it does, you have a choice. Stay and accept the betrayal, or walk away and reclaim your life. I chose the latter, and honestly, I've never been happier that I did. In the end, this experience taught me that betrayal is one of the most painful things a person can endure, but it can also be a catalyst for growth. I've learned that I am stronger than I thought, that I can survive heartbreak, and that I deserve someone who respects and genuinely cares about me, not someone who sneaks around and lies. I will keep moving forward, carrying the lessons I've learned, and hoping that someday I'll find someone who truly values honesty and loyalty. Because I now know what I won't accept, and that's more valuable than anything else.